All right, we're recording. Hi, Miss Engle. Thanks for coming to our class, our law class at Wheaton High School. We really appreciate it, and we know a little bit about what your background is and what you do. But I think it would be best if you just let us know, like, what is your job and sort of what it entails.
Okay. Hi guys. First of all, thank you for having me. This is really taking me back to my days in high school when I came to DC with the close-up program, and you guys are lucky enough to have sessions like this in your high school. So I think that's awesome. About my job, so I am the assistant secretary for the majority of the Senate, and what that entails is advising senators and their staff on how to pass legislation, right? So I'll focus on bills. So there are different ways of passing a law, and you have to have a legislative strategy to get it from introduction to the president's desk. Part of my job is to advise senators and their staff how to do that. So you can introduce the bill and have it sent to committee. You can bypass the committee process. You can take it straight to the floor, or you can have a big piece of legislation consideration on the floor.
Wait, I have to ask. Wait, so I'm going to interrupt a lot because I'm very anxious and everything. And plus, people have a million good questions for you, so we got to keep it going. But first of all, you advise. Don't these senators already know how to do stuff? Like, why do they need you to tell them how to make a law get passed?
Because it's very complicated.
Okay.
You have a general sense, but there are a lot of options. So you have to figure out what is the best option for that piece of legislation at that time.
All right. So why did you want this job? What interests you about this work, or just generally working in the government or working on Capitol Hill? Oh, that was, oh wait, I'm supposed to be I got to drop names here. We got Mary, okay. Daniela, Cami, Amen, Jasmine. They all want to know why you chose this job. Go ahead.
Why I chose this job.
Yep.
So I graduated from college. I was pretty active in student government at college. I had a job lined up after college. The Friday before I was supposed to start on Monday, Tom Dashiell's office called me and asked if I wanted to move out to DC. I said yes. 3 days.
Tom, these kids were not even born at this time. Tom Dashiell was the Speaker of the House a long time ago, right?
So he was the Senate Majority Leader a long time ago.
Senate Majority Leader, I mean, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I came out here, I started answering phone calls from constituents, giving tours. I worked my way up, and I worked in the Senate cloakroom, which is a part of the floor, part of the Senate floor. And it's the center of all of the action. It's the nerve center, the communication center. Anything that happens on the floor, I deal with it. I deal with senators, I deal with staff, I deal with all the hot issues. So it's just a very exciting job.
All right. So how did you get this job? So for example, what did you said you just graduated from school and then you got this job. What did you study in school to prepare you? I mean, you didn't get this job right out of school, but your first job in government, what did you study to get that? And then how did you work your way up to what your job is now?
So I was a political science major in college with a minor in communications. I really liked organizational communications. In high school, I was on the speech team doing debate. No, I'm kind of
mock trial debate.
No,
we're not doing the ethics club. I know that.
No, okay. Well, we don't even have
do the ethics club. That's the
best. So skipping forward a little bit, I was very interested in government. I don't like politics, but I love government. I love solving problems, and that's what I do now. So I got my job with a connection from somebody who is already working for Senator Davenport in the Senate, and the office liked me, and I started at the lowest rung on the ladder, and I just worked as hard as I could, and I really went into it with an attitude of what don't I know, how can I learn it, and what can make me better. So I just stuck with it, and I have been rewarded by being elevated periodically throughout my career.
All right, that's great. And again, I forgot all this name dropping. A lot of those questions were from Catherine, Jefferson, Daniel, Kimberly, Daniela, Valerie, Aaron, Kevin, Alam. They all wanted to know stuff about how you got your job, but we're moving on. We want to know, like, first of all, this is from Cami and Jefferson. What is it like to work in the Senate? Like that, to me, that's a great question because it's so weird. You know, you go to work in a normal place, you know, you just have your colleagues and everything, but you're working in this place that's on TV all the time with all these famous people. Like, what is it like? What does that feel like?
It's surreal. It depends on the year and it depends on the day. These last 6 years have been working like you're drinking out of a fire hose, just constant incoming. And I deal with a lot of people who've worked for weeks, months, years, sometimes decades on legislation, and they come to the Senate and to the floor, and they are hair on fire, so stressed, and they look to me and my colleagues to help them guide their way. And
When you say people, you're talking about actual senators here that are hair
senators
on
and
fire
staff,
stress? Okay.
everybody.
Uh-huh.
And because I work in the cloakroom, on the floor staff, and on the Senate floor, I'm on camera all day. Well, not all day. No, there are no cameras in the cloakroom.
Yeah.
But on the Senate floor, if you're watching a vote and you see the big desk where the presiding officer sits, there's a marble desk in front of that, and then in front of the marble desk there are two little small desks. Sometimes you can see me out there taking votes in the Senate.
What is the likelihood that if we asked you to do something weird on screen that you would do it for us on C-SPAN and then we could show it to the class?
Well, if we're in a quorum call, so our schedule's pretty tight. So usually senators are speaking on the floor and it's a real tight angle. But
all right, I can
quorum
take
call, I can go out to the well and give, like a signal. I can say, okay, I'll move my hair behind my ear, and that'll then you could know that's the signal.
All right, we're gonna look out for that. All right, so a bunch of people, Bless, Maddie, Kai, Mikel, Gio from period 3, Aaron, Francisco, and Alam. They just want to know, like, what do you do on a daily basis? Like, you sort of talk on a sort of a high level, I talk to senators. Like, you go in the morning, what happens? What are you doing throughout the day?
I would say that I'm an inbox warrior. And what I mean by that is I get a lot of emails all day long and I respond to them. So if a senator has a question on how to hotline a bill, I can kind of work with the staff and talk to them through the system. I have the cloakroom is an L-shaped room that around the Senate floor. And I have a nice little desk all by myself, and I have two leather club chairs on my left side and a leather sofa on my right hand side. And senators or staff will come down and sit next to me and ask me, what they think they should do. Senator Peters, who's the chair of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, he is a frequent flyer of that chair, and I deal with certain committees trying to pass legislation. And when he has a bill he wants to pass, I work the process to try to get consent on our side, and I work with the Republicans to get it through their side. And sometimes when you're trying to pass something, you have a little hiccup, and we need to figure out what that hiccup is. So I'll say, okay, you should go talk to this senator and see what they can find out from the Republicans.
Can you give an example? What does that mean, a hiccup? That sounds technical. Like, what exactly would you find out?
So when we're trying to pass a bill, something that's fairly non-controversial, and that definition is in the eye of the beholder. So everybody thinks they wrote a perfect bill, but it takes consent to pass it.
Right.
So it's my job to talk to the committee, talk to the leaders, staff, and hotline it, which is the message that goes to all the Democratic senators, really their staff. And I work closely with the Republicans, and they have a similar system on their side. If there's no objection, we'll pass it by consent. If there is an objection, we have to figure out what that is, because they're not going to tell us.
Wait, though, I think you're way above us right now.
Okay.
Because I don't know, what is it? Pass it by consent? What are these words? I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what's happening here. Like, where we think like there's a vote, the senators vote on it, and then there's a then we have a law. Like, what's going on? What are you talking about?
So you can pass a bill on the floor, where you have a really big bill, like an appropriations bill.
Okay.
You have consideration on the floor. Bills are amendable in the Senate, debatable, and you can do it forever. You can do it for months, days, weeks, months, but you have to come to a conclusion. So you can have a vote on it, and you have to get an agreement to vote on it or force a vote through procedural mechanisms, which is really deep into the weeds.
Right.
Or everybody can say, yeah, cool, we love this bill, we're just going to pass it by consent. So the leader at the end of the day would go to the floor and say, I ask consent to pass this bill. And if
even the Republicans, everybody's got to consent. 100%.
Everybody has to agree. Yeah. So it's a little more technical than that, but you'll come to the floor and say, I want to pass this bill. Nobody objects. It's passed. And then it goes over to the House of Representatives. And if they say, okay, cool, we can pass this, then it goes to the president for signature. Got
it. All right. So a few more questions just about your job and how, like, is your job hard? How much do you work at your job? Does it interfere with your personal life? Is it stressful? What is the time of year is the most busy for you? These are all questions from a whole lot of people that wanted to know about what your work is like. So
yes, it is busy. It is stressful. There is a constant level of paranoia that you're going to mess something up and pass something that you weren't supposed to pass. So that paranoia and that requirement of perfection, because if you make a mistake, a lot of people will know it, and some things we can fix, some things we can't. So we try to avoid mistakes. We have lots of checks and balances. We have lots of people taking a look at what you're trying to do. The hours are crazy. I work Senate hours. So whenever the Senate is in session, I'm there. The busiest times of the year, I think, is during appropriations time, when we're trying to pass a major appropriations bill. Anytime we do a budget resolution, but you just never know when it's going to be busy. You might think, oh, this is going to be an easy week, and then it turns into a very busy and crazy week. And does it interfere with my family life? With COVID, we worked in person the entire time, but we've learned to do some stuff remotely. So that has given me a little bit more flexibility to get home and spend some time with my kids.
That's great. So I have two more questions about your job. One, a lot of people wanted to know, Aiden, Diego, Mary, Kimberly, Valerie, Francisco, Gio, like, do you enjoy your job, and what is something that you really like about it that is fun?
Yes, I enjoy my job. It can be very, very, very stressful, but also rewarding. And it's fun because I'm in the mix of things, all of the things. Right. So it's pretty fun. What was the second part of the question?
Well, the next, this was Lisbeth wanted to know if there's something in particular that you really want, that you really like. But I think we're going to move on to this, because I think this is kind of like, do you think that this is from alum, do you think that your job has a real impact on what is actually getting passed out there? Like, are you just a paper pusher, or are you really, making a difference in what happens out there?
Yeah, both. Sometimes I feel like a paper pusher, but somebody has to push that paper. Right. And I know how to push the paper, and I know where to push it to. Sometimes one of my jobs is I send out emails to a really big listserv with senators on it, staff directors, people in the White House, people in the agencies, legislative directors, all sorts of people. Sometimes when I feel like we're at a standstill when we're considering a bill, I'll put in my message a possible path forward, because I know certain senators and certain staff are reading my message, and then they can go off and convince key players, like particularly, so we work in the majority, so I'm trying to steer the ship to pass things. When you're in the minority, sometimes you want to help pass them, sometimes you want to stop things.
Right.
But I know that people are reading it and they can get people to give consent and get us some progress. So sometimes I do feel like it really makes an impact.
All right, that's great. That's great. We got a couple of weird questions. We're gonna throw these in randomly throughout the day. So throughout the interview, let's hear what Raja wants to know. Do you think aliens exist? Yes or no?
Yes or no? No explanation?
That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna say no.
Well, listen, and if you know, like you might know some, you have security clearance, you might know stuff that we don't know, right? So you don't have to reveal any confidential information, but just give us this.
I'm gonna say no.
No. Okay. No on that one. All right. Tammy wants to know, what's your favorite Netflix show?
Ooh, I'm gonna say Emily in Paris right now.
Emily in Paris. I don't even know that one. One of the kids is gonna have to teach
It's really just simple.
All right. Let's move on. All right. Okay, we've heard a little bit about what your day is like there. Diego and Allie were interested in, what is a day of a Senate? What is the life of a senator like? You must be seeing
there's
them
a little bit of a rhythm for a senator. I would say in the morning, lots of phone calls and meetings, talking to their staff to discuss what's the day going to look like? What do you need to do to prepare for that day? The mornings are usually comprised of committee meetings or hearings. Then on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays and Thursdays, they have caucus, some sort of a luncheon, either meeting with the caucus or other smaller group lunches. And then the afternoons, sometimes we try to have some votes in the morning, and we try to have some votes on the floor in the afternoon. Sometimes they'll come to the floor to make a statement. And then a lot of times they have like a fundraiser in the evening. They can have fundraisers in the morning for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I would say the majority of the senators go home for the weekend. And we try really hard to be done at 1:45 on Thursday so they can get on their 5 o'clock flights, so they can have a day in their state with their constituents on Friday. And then they come back on Monday.
Well, when you just described the long hours that they do and everything like that, I think it's very, I want to ask especially Gio from First Period's question, because does anything funny ever happen in the Senate? It seems like a very boring place to me.
Never.
Nothing
no, of
funny
course things are funny in the Senate.
What happened? Tell me something funny that ever happened in the Senate.
Well, I'll just tell you something that was like really embarrassing, and some people think is funny for me. It was quite a few years ago, and I was getting a senator a glass of water. For some reason, we didn't have pages, who are 16-year-old kids from all across the country who usually get the senators water and such. But I was doing this for the senator, and on the floor, they speak with the microphone, and there's a cord, because of security, you can't have wireless stuff. And I walked right over the cord in the senator's microphone that was attached to his lapel. He kind of pushed back, and I'm like, oh, geez, that was really embarrassing. Sorry. I thought I'm going to go around. And it happened again. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm so sorry. So, funny.
Well, I'm glad you did not lose your job over that. You're yanking microphones off senators. All right, let's move on. What Kai wants to know, and wait, this is actually a bunch of people. Kai wants to know, and Aiden wants to know, Valerie wants to know, Gabriel wants to know, this Eamon wants to know. We got a lot of different things. Andy, a lot of people are in this area of like, who is actually coming up with these ideas for new laws? How are these laws actually getting constructed? We learned a little bit about lobbyists and their influence on the process. To what extent are they writing the laws or involved in the creating of the laws? Any information you could share about that?
These are some really big questions.
Yes.
So anybody can come up with a law, right? In the Senate, there are like 4,000 to 5,000 bills that are introduced every Congress. In the House, it goes up to like 8,000 or 9,000. So there are a lot of bills that get introduced, and you can have an idea, a new idea to solve a problem. You may have been work that you want to introduce that bill. You may have an old idea that you've been introducing this bill for, for multiple Congresses, and you just keep working on it. Sometimes it's to help some constituents. Sometimes it is to help to solve a big general problem. And there are different ways of passing the laws. And so there are different decision-making processes for whatever you're talking about. I think what you're probably most interested in is how is it decided when a bill comes to the floor and what you're going to pass, right? So yes. Appropriations, you got to do that every year. You know you have to do that. National Defense Authorization Act, which governs what the Department of Defense, all the military folks can do. That has to be considered every year on the floor. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of appropriations bills. You've got the national defense, you've got all sorts of different reauthorizations, and all of these. So you take those, that takes a big chunk of time. You take nominations, because the Senate confirms nominations, judges, Supreme Court, executive branch officials. So that takes up some time. So then you have to react to what's going on in the world, right? You're going to war. You need to, something like that. Do we have high inflation? So yeah, we had high inflation. So last year we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We have a problem with supply chain, and the semiconductor chips needed some help because of competition in the world. So that was something very important to Senator Schumer and the caucus. So we passed what we called the CHIPS legislation. So there has to be a need, it has to solve a problem, it has to be timely, and some political will behind it.
All right, that's great. And you answered actually some other people's questions just while you were talking. That's perfect. Eileen and Jacqueline, I hope you appreciate that. She anticipated what you're going to say. All right, let's ask a couple more wacky questions, then Senate dysfunction, then we're done. So here's your wacky question. Next one is from Geo in third period. Is the Matrix real? We need to know.
Yes, I'm going to say for sure. Yeah.
Man, we're all in the Matrix right now. I don't know what's going on. All right. Brian wants to know which of the two major political parties is more like a dog and which one is more like a cat?
I'm going to say that the Republicans are more like a dog and the Democrats are more like a cat.
Well, you have to have a reason why. What's the reason why? You can't just
so not just yet. Okay. So Republicans are, I don't like getting political.
All right. Well, it's too hot a subject for you. We're out. We're out. We can't touch that. We don't want Ms. Engle to get in trouble for her controversial views on which party is more like an animal. Here's the last wacky question. We're moving on. Diego wants to know, do you think that the United States is going to fail? It's not that wacky. I mean, it's a real question, but
it depends on your definition of fail.
Right.
And I'm going to say no, because I have great hope in our upcoming generation that they are going to be active in their communities and they are going to care and care about our government and exercise their rights.
All right, that's what we're doing right here. Okay, now we're moving on to some questions about a little bit Senate dysfunction that we know about. And Emerson had a few dynamite questions here about, why does the government make these laws that benefit big corporations. It doesn't feel like they're doing things that actually are helping the United States. When are they going to start working for things that matter, like global peace and all of these issues that are important? Do you have any sense of if
Well, I mean, I would challenge the premise of the question.
Okay.
You know, why don't we do anything to help, help people, world peace? That is not something that we're not going to pass a law to bring world peace. Like that's not a thing. We can pass some laws to help further those goals through the USAID funding that helps fund democracy and helps provide some structure for world peace. But that's not something that the U.S. government can just snap their fingers and do. It takes I would say it takes a village, but it takes an entire world, and it takes everyday people to further those goals, not just Congress. What was the other part of?
Well, just sort of, it's not only world peace, which I recognize that's a pretty serious one, but we talked about in class how there are popular ideas out there that people want, like gun restrictions. Some people asked, I know Eileen and Raja and Eamon asked about gun restrictions, for example. It's something that a lot of people want, but it doesn't seem like it can get passed. And climate change,
we passed some gun reform. I don't think a lot of people know that we did that in the last Congress. There are many, many, many members who want to do more on that. People are very incredibly frustrated at the fact that we can't do more. We've done a lot to create jobs. If you look at, I don't know if you guys follow the jobs reports, but on Friday,
do not. I know that they don't.
But on Friday,
right,
there was a jobs report that said the U.S. created more jobs in the last 2 years under this administration that any president has created in 4 years of their entire term. That's a huge number of jobs. So, and that I think is a direct result of some of the legislation that the Senate passed, or that Congress passed and the president signed into law. So, and we did a lot of stuff on the pandemic. It should never have gotten that out of control, but that's
so it's just wrong. There's a lot of good stuff going on. It's just we don't hear about it as much as we should. Maybe.
And there's more to do. And there's always more to do.
All right, a couple more questions, then we're done. Daniel, Mary, Valerie, Mikkel, Kevin, Catherine, John, Kimberly, they all want to know, have you witnessed any examples of political corruption? Have you seen any kind of shady arrangements that we might raise an eyebrow to?
I mean, have I seen anybody like hand a senator an envelope of cash? No, I have not seen that. Am I disappointed in how they vote? And I know why they're voting for, because some special interest is, supporting them. Yeah.
So you do, without, obviously you're not going to name names, but you do feel like you've seen examples where campaign contributions have influenced people's votes.
Well,
maybe.
I mean, nothing is that black and white. There's never, it would be illegal and somebody would be in jail if it was a straight line like that. But, you can kind of see, who, it's all public information of where they get their contributions and what they're supporting.
Okay. Brian wants to know just about senators. Do you think that senators in general care more about their image and pleasing their party and things that we don't want them to care about, or do they really care about helping people and doing things that they believe in?
It depends.
Okay.
There are different types of senators. Some that are there to legislate, some that are there because they're super rich and they've kind of maxed out on doing rich guy stuff, and they want to come and be powerful. And then there's a combination. And so, some people just like being a senator and that glamour, but I think you have to have a desire to want to legislate. And there are some members who've been, people who've been elected that don't really want to legislate. They want, they ran on the fact that, the system is broken, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that. And when you have people like that, they come to Washington to try to break the system and then complain that the system is broken. And that, to me, is the most frustrating thing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys, you give me so much great time. Really appreciate it. I'm going to end on one more question, and then we're going to be done. Okay. This is from Claude, and he just wants to know, what is sort of the worst things you've seen in politics, and what is the best thing? What can we be optimistic about? Can we end this interview about politics?
I think the worst thing that I've seen is just really disappointment when we can't fix a problem. And the best thing that I've seen is when we have been successful and we've fixed a problem. And we have lots of examples of that over the last Congress that I think, that I'm pretty proud of.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't make you late
Good
to
luck, everybody.
your brunch. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you for
too.
coming in.